yeah, we can go on that.
Oh, here you
Oh,
go. Right on time.
well, 1 minute late, but I won't be that. And this one. All right, yeah, we can get started.
Okay, with that, I will start the recording.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we are live.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order the Friday, October 10th meeting of the New Jersey Pinelands Commission. Jay, can you please read the open public meetings act statement?
Yes, good morning. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Pinelands Commission was given in compliance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act by providing notice to all municipal and county clerks of the Pinelands area, to the Secretary of State on December 20, 2024, and to the Commission's officially designated newspapers on December 20, 2024, and by posting a copy on the Commission's website.
Great, thank you. Susan, can you please call roll?
Commissioner Selta,
Here.
Commissioner Avery,
Here.
Commissioner Busby Cook, Commissioner Iyer, Commissioner Littman, Commissioner Lobauer,
Here.
Commissioner Matro,
Here.
Commissioner Moriello, Commissioner Meade, Commissioner Gillespie,
Here.
Commissioner Rittler-Sanchez,
Here.
Commissioner Signer,
Here.
Commissioner Walner,
Here.
Commissioner Knox. Okay, we have a quorum.
All right. Can everyone please stand if you're able and join me in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I get a motion and a second, please, to adopt the minutes from our September 12th meeting?
I'll make that.
I'll second it.
All right. We'll figure it out. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to reports, we're gonna start with Alan with the P&I committee report. Can I put your mic on?
Thank you. The Policy and Implementation Committee met on September 26th. It approved the minutes of the August 29th, 2025 meeting. The committee received an overview of the Commission's response to public comments received for rule package number 1. Staff did not recommend any changes to the language of the rule proposal and provided the anticipated schedule for adoption. The committee voted in favor of recommending to the full commission the adoption of rule package number 1 without changes. Research scientist Christian Geithner presented a summary of the Pinelands long-term water level monitoring program that's gone on for years. Lastly, the committee received an update on the status of municipal housing elements and fair share plans for the 4th round of affordable housing process. Any questions?
Any questions for Alan? Thank you, Alan. Thank you for covering.
No problem.
All right, next up, Susan.
Okay, I just have a couple things, because we do have quite a few things on the agenda this morning. So, an update on the Fenwick Manor rehabilitation project. We're a little behind schedule where we had hoped to be at this time, but not too bad. Our consultants have been, they've been here visiting again in late September. They've walked around and did something with all the windows, cut holes in the ceilings and the floors, and crawled underneath the building and did all kinds of things. They're working on finalizing the final designs, so we can then do our RFP and hire a contractor to do the actual work. So that's good. The other good news is the process for pre-qualifying the contractors, which is required for a project like ours, was successfully completed with a number of contractors who applied to be pre-qualified, and the New Jersey Historic Trust qualified all of them, so we'll have a pool of contractors to choose from when we do our RFP, so that's also good. So we're really just waiting on those final design documents before we proceed. And also, just so I think I mentioned this last month, we're working on a transition report for the new administration as requested by the governor's office. It will outline high impact projects and priorities for the commission, as well as any issues that will need the attention of the new administration in early 2026. So a collective group of us here have been working on that. Paul will finish that up and make it look beautiful before we send it off next week. So there's that, and that's really all I have, so.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Susan? All right, Chuck.
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public. I have 3 brief items I wanted to mention. On September 15th, the staff issued a certificate of filing for the 650,000 square foot Amazon warehouse that's being proposed at the former site of the Atlantic City Racetrack. That application will now move on to the Township Planning Board for consideration. On September 17th, several members of our staff met with Egg Harbor City officials, including the mayor. The officials wanted to discuss a number of projects going on in Egg Harbor City, including a large residential project that had received approval just north of the intersection of Philadelphia Avenue and White Horse Pike. It's called Egg Harbor City North. It's a residential development project that is stalled, and the city's looking to reinvigorate that project, perhaps through an amended redevelopment plan. The city's also interested in capping and constructing a solar facility on their closed but not capped landfill. And the last matter I just wanted to mention, we've also corresponded with the mayor of Morris River Township. Morris River Township is also interested in capping their landfill. It's a closed landfill but uncapped, and then developing a solar facility on that landfill. Based on our regulations, the size of the solar facility is somewhat limited, and we provided a couple of suggestions to the mayor on how the town may be able to address that issue. And now I'd like to ask April Field to cover a couple of items, please.
Good morning, everyone. 2 items that that have been of note to the public lately. Wanted to provide ongoing updates since we're also in the management board. Mike's
Can
saying
you
that. Can everyone hear me?
You're like a star.
The first is our application that we received back in 2025 near the Black Run Preserve. It's an application for a wetlands determination and T&E review. The property owner has indicated that they're currently pursuing permanent preservation of the land with Green Acres funding potentially, and they're looking to have the wetlands field verified as part of the verification process, appraisal process, excuse me. And I just want to let everybody know that the wetlands have been field verified, and we sent a letter saying that the wetlands line was accurate. So they should be good to go and off for appraisal. The second application that we continually have questions about is a large residential subdivision application in Pemberton Township. This is for 578 dwellings on an approximate 700-acre parcel. The applicant received a certificate of filing back in 2005, and then in 2007 they received general development plan approval. That general development plan approval from the township has been extended until 2027. There's about 7 substantial issues with the residential subdivision application, and the applicant has been working for years now trying to resolve all of those issues. We recently sent a letter in August detailing the remaining issues for the applicant, and the applicant got back to us with responses to those issues and ask for a meeting. The applicant recently sent us an email back in September 9th and asked that we defer the meeting because they have received information from Green Acres that they may be making an offer to purchase the parcel in October of 2025. So our meeting with them has been deferred till November, awaiting an answer from Green Acres. And the only other thing I wanted to mention of interest, we're still kind of gathering facts on this, so I don't have much information yet, is that DEP has discovered an invasive fish species in a lake in the Pinelands area called snakehead. And so we had a meeting with them and we're talking to them about potential for elimination of the species. That's all we know right now. And that's all I have.
Nice, all right, thank you. Anyone have any questions or concerns for Chuck or April? All right, thanks to you both. Gina?
Good morning. Very quickly, I'll touch on the agenda items for the October Policy and Implementation Committee meeting. We will have presentations from the DEP on artificial turf. One of the presentations will be from Green Acres and how they evaluate recreation funding proposals that involve artificial turf. And the other will be from the Division of Science and Research staff, summarizing the current science around artificial turf. The agenda will also include staff recommendation on a request for funding through the Pinelands Conservation Fund for permanent land protection. We did, at the end of the open period for funding requests, we did receive one proposal, and staff is currently evaluating it against the matrix of priorities, and we'll be bringing that recommendation to the P&I committee for a very large project in October. Keeping my months straight this time. And staff is preparing the report on the septic pilot program for the November commission meeting. And just this past month, with the start of the new federal fiscal year in October, we kicked off a very large multi-year project on developing a new application information system. We're hoping that involves many staff across the commission, from regulatory programs who mostly use it, but also land use programs. Eventually we'll be wrapping in business services, on fees, and of course, executive staff. So, big project, many years, but hopefully a great new system with lots of functionality for everyone. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Gina?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you only had one project?
Only one project submitted, yes. All right, next up is Stacy.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that the oral argument for the Clayton appeal, which involves the KC rules, is scheduled for October 29th at 9:30. My understanding is that the appellate division does live stream its arguments, but I will confirm that with Jay, who is nodding his head at me, so I think that is correct. If anyone has any interest in watching that argument, please let me know and I will get that information for you. And the other thing is, you recently received an email from me. It is October, time for the Executive Order 41 training. I know some of you have already taken it, and I really appreciate you getting that done. We have till November 14th to get it finished. The module that is on the State Ethics Commission website has been updated, so you no longer have to take, the cannabis training separately. The training runs for about 40 minutes, so if you could please do that at your earliest convenience, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Stacy? All right. Brad.
Commissioners. I have one update to provide. Just at the beginning of this month, we released our new and enhanced internal zoning tracking system. It replaced a system that was originally designed back in the 1990s. As of right now, we are tracking around 600 different zones within the Pinelands area. So this is taking into account various permitted uses, minimum lot size requirements, PDC requirements, and we've sort of modernized the database behind the scenes, as well as the user interface that users in Land Use Programs Office, Regulatory Programs Office are using. And so that is launched, and we are working on sort of a public-facing version of that we're hoping could be released sometime in early spring of 2026. And I just want to note that this was a project that was partially funded by our National Park Service grant. So, good news.
Very cool. Anyone have any questions or comments for Brad?
First, just to mention again, we are gearing up for our annual World Water Monitoring Challenge event at Batso Lake on October 24th. At that time, members of your staff and DEP and the Park Service will be educating 150 students about Pinelands, including students from Hamilton and Pinelands region. Secondly, we are busily compiling and vetting dozens of photos for inclusion on the 2026 Pinelands National Reserve wall calendar, which will be funded by the National Park Service, and we'll have a water theme and will be distributed free of charge in early December. And last but not least, we held, I'm going to pull up a presentation here. We held our outdoor painting program here at our office last week. Let me get rid of this here. Right, okay. And this was led by Amber Malm, who's a planning specialist and a painting enthusiast. She showed here. And you can see they painted the barn. Oops. And we had numerous artists here painting in oil and watercolor. This was Thursday afternoon. There's watercolor on the left. You can see our historic outhouse shown there. two and a half seats for those. And beautiful paint jobs, beautiful painting of the American sycamore. And I just thought it was a really nice event, and there was some really talented people, including our own Mark Palvas, who painted Fenwick Manor. Finally, got it done. Painted it right there.
This is the after before the renovation picture, so we're gonna ask him to repaint it after the project. Yeah. It was really, it was a beautiful afternoon.
Yes.
And a lot of excitement, and people were really, it was really interesting to watch them. It was pretty cool to see all the different perspectives, and they all seemed very happy to be there. Thank you, Amber. It was her idea. It's fabulous.
Great job. She did a wonderful job explaining the process of painting, and I think we'd love to do that again. And those are my updates.
I got a barn, see if we can arrange that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Amber. And thanks, Paul. Anyone have any questions or comments? All right, moving right along. Can I get a motion and a second, please, for a resolution for 3 public development applications in Hamilton, Egg Harbor Township, and Galloway Township?
I'll move it. I'll second.
Thank you. Chuck, you wanna run through, I know you have some areas you said.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'd like to set the stage for the public development applications. There was a shifting agenda, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone has the same scorecard for today. When the original packet was sent out to all the commissioners and the agenda was posted online, there were 4 public development applications up for consideration. In the meantime, the Lenape District Board of Education asked that their application proposing an artificial surface grass area at Shawnee High School be deferred until the November 2025 commission meeting. So that application is not on the agenda today. And secondly, there were some quickly developing facts on the Hamilton recreational facility application. I'm gonna spend just a couple of minutes to kind of frame that issue as to why amended development report, public development report was sent out, and then ask Ernest Deeman and your staff to cover the 3 public development applications that are for consideration today before the agenda, or on the agenda today, excuse me. So after we had sent out the public development report dated September the 19th for the proposed Hamilton recreational facility, within a number of days, on September 26th, we received in a threatened and endangered species survey that we have required to be performed for the actual Hamilton Lake. Some of the commissioners may remember that we approved an application to apply herbicide to Hamilton Lake. One of the conditions of that application was that after the herbicide had been applied, and in the fall of 2025, Hamilton would submit to us a report evaluating the effectiveness of the herbicide, the effectiveness of the strategy that the staff developed to protect the 3 known threatened and endangered aquatic plants in Hamilton Lake, and the buffers that we applied to those plants. So that survey came into us on September 26th. When we took a look at it quickly, the survey actually identified a 4th threatened and endangered species in Hamilton Lake. The 4th species, although I don't want to publicly say its exact location to protect the plant, obviously, the plant was in the vicinity of development that was proposed in the application that you have before you. We then spoke to Hamilton officials about how to address that issue, and then Hamilton made the decision to revise its development application to remove certain development from the application that's pending before you today. That the removed development, 2 docks that would have extended into the lake, a stone path that led to those docks, and Ernie, remind me of the 3rd.
A vegetation proposal in the area, what they call a living shoreline.
A living shoreline that was proposed, obviously along the shoreline of the lake. So the amended public development application that you have before you today, with the date of October the 8th, reflects Hamilton's revisions to the plan. And with that, I'll ask Ernest Deeman to review those 3 applications, specifically to start off with the Hamilton application.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ask Paul to bring up the overall site plan for the Hamilton facility.
Zoom in.
One out, please. No. So this is the Hamilton Lake Park. It's an existing recreational facility comprised of baseball fields, playgrounds, pavilions, canoe launches, and other structures. Hamilton is proposing certain upgrades to this facility. They're proposing to replace the existing pavilion. They're proposing to replace the playground. They're also proposing to install or construct a new maintenance building. Now 2 docks instead of 4. Restroom building. They're also proposing to construct, he moved it.
It was upside down. Now it's upside down even more. Is this right?
No, 1 more, 2 more.
Okay.
They are also,
Sideways.
they're also proposing to pave existing access road and parking spaces. They're also proposing to construct a new paved parking space and a paved bicycle trail. There's considerable amount of development occurring within the envelope. There are wetlands associated with Hamilton Lake on the parcel. All development will be located, except for the 2 proposed docks today. All other development will be located no closer than what's existing today. Let me move on. No, Paul, did I give you an error?
Let me check.
I think we did, yes, we do.
May I ask, are the existing roads that are going to be paved, are they stone now or cement?
They're a combination of gravel and natural sand.
And some of them are very close to wetlands, correct?
That is correct. Hamilton area, yes.
Okay, let me get it on the, screen share, yes, we do have it. Zoom out.
Yes. So as you can see, this is the Hamilton Lakes Park. Specifically, the road that the commissioner just mentioned is that oval track around the existing baseball fields. We also have an application for the construction of a 46-space parking lot at the Alder Avenue Middle School. Well, I guess instead of running through all the public, should I answer those questions individually?
Could you point out, can you put your mic on? Oh, thank you. Sorry, apologize. I understand there's supposed to be 15 infiltration basins that are going to be put in with this project?
That's correct.
And how are they going to work?
Paul, can you bring up the
Yeah,
site
no
plan
problem.
again?
No problem.
Unfortunately, the site plan doesn't. Can you scroll down?
It didn't jump out at me when I.
Well, no, unfortunately, this overall sheet, I'd have to show you the grading plan. But there's facilities spread throughout the site, outside of the wetland buffer, the wetlands and required wetland buffer. But they're spread through the entire parcel.
Are they all fairly small?
They're all fairly small. As I mentioned, there's, I think, 15 proposed. So they actually are addressing that, where we typically require that you propose small stormwater facilities throughout the site instead of one large facility.
Okay. And they have, because they're infiltration basins, will they need any kind of special maintenance to make sure that they continue to work?
Yes, it will, and they've addressed the maintenance requirements from the comprehensive management plan. They have a schedule and an actual maintenance plan prepared.
So these are all new, they don't have any existing in the site? Is that why they're putting in some? Just curious.
These are all new. Most of the development that you see that's existing today pre-existed the Pinelands comprehensive management plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ernie on? All right, you're
Okay.
done. Next up.
Paul, can you please bring up?
Alder School whole parcel?
Yes,
Zoom
yes,
out.
zoom out, please. So the Egg Grove Township Board of Education has an application before you for the construction of a 46-space parking lot at the Alder Avenue Middle School. The district has indicated that their existing parking facilities are inadequate for their staff. This is the overall site. And the next slide, I'll bring your attention to the lower right-hand corner. The red outline is the actual limits of disturbance for both the parking facility and the stormwater basin that's proposed. Again, it's approximately 46 spaces. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ernie on this? Yep, just
I'm curious about how parking gets determined, for schools, for example. Is that something that the school?
I mean, it's not our purview,
Yeah,
so.
right, well,
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah.
by now, I was just, except that it adds a lot of impervious cover, and I just was wondering if there's limits to what they can do, or how they determine how much they need, or is it just?
Zoning board.
Yeah, well, for the
Consideration.
school board, yeah, I mean, for private development, there's parking requirements in
Right.
the municipal ordinance that,
Right.
they determine that.
Right.
Commission doesn't have any role to play there, but as far as public uses like this and school boards, I'm not sure how that works. I don't think they need the town's approval, so it must be,
A school board.
perhaps there are other standards, but
Facility.
we might be aware of them.
Yeah, it didn't seem that the zoning would necessarily cover it, so I figured that there must be another thing. I'm just curious on that, thank you.
Any other questions on this for Ernie? All right.
And then finally, we have before us a two-lot subdivision, no additional development proposed in Galway Township. There's an existing senior center building and a 4,000 square foot recycling drop-off. You don't have an
I
area.
was gonna say, I didn't think so.
Galloway Township's just proposing to place each of those uses on an individual lot. It's in a Pinelands Regional Growth Area and a Pinelands Village of Cologne, which permits both parcels will meet the, minimum lot size requirements in. I've mentioned that the commercial center or the community center is serviced by sewer, so there's no issue with septic pollution.
All right, any questions or comments on that one for Ernie?
The only comment I have is that I tried to pull it up, and I couldn't find out where these two things were. It was very difficult to determine when I was looking at Google Maps to figure out where these things were. I saw the senior center, but I didn't see the recycling.
It's very small, it's directly behind the senior center on the road off of Air Force Pike.
Right. It's like behind it now.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, thank you. Next up, can I get a motion and a second to please move our CMP amendments? Jessica moved it, can I get a second? And Doug second, great. Susan?
Okay,
So exciting.
we're giving Paul a real challenge
Yeah,
today.
a lot of stuff going on.
We are very, well, he's working on that. I'll just say we're very happy to be at this point in our rulemaking process after a long, long time. The proposal, as you know, was published back in June, and largely this presentation, which I'm not gonna, we did this full comprehensive presentation at the P&I committee meeting, and I don't wanna run through the whole thing in detail again. Which button do I push? The down?
Bottom.
But what we tried to do at the committee was to give everyone, and hopefully you had an opportunity to review the written comments that came in that are posted on the website. We just tried to kind of summarize where we were in the process, what occurred during the 60-day public comment period on the rule, what the comments were that we received. We got a lot of comments, which is unusual. Also unusual that the comments we received were 99% positive and encouraging the commission to move forward with adoption. That also doesn't usually happen. Usually you just get comments about the things people don't like about what's being proposed. So this was a bit of a different scenario for us, not a bad thing. Vast majority of comments related to the proposed redesignation of the Black Run watershed, which we've been talking about for years, maybe even decades at this point. So just a reminder for all of you, this involves a map change to the map behind Chuck there, the land capability map. It's a redesignation of land from the rural development area in yellow to a new forest area in dark green. You can see the sort of dark green area in the middle of the map on the screen there as well. That was the change that would be made as a result of these amendments. Most commenters strongly encouraged the commission to move forward with that for a variety of reasons. There was some confusion, I think, with some of the comments where people were encouraging the commission to move forward with the amendment to protect Black Run Preserve. Black Run Preserve is already preserved, so this rule really has no impact on the preserve itself. What it's doing is reducing permitted development intensity in the areas around the Black Run Preserve that are private ownership. And a number of people simply, their comments really weren't specific to the Black Run. They were more about protecting the Pinelands, limiting development everywhere, and moving forward quickly, and urging Evesham Township to move forward quickly with rezoning of the area themselves. We had one commenter who supported the redesignation of the area, but also asked or sort of wished that the amendment had also included requirements for development and management of accessible trails. Just of note here, our response to that in the adoption notice is that we recognize that there's a growing need and interest in accessible trails throughout the Pinelands. The rule doesn't authorize that or even speak to that. It doesn't require trails be created. It doesn't contain standards for accessible trails. We are working on some suggested amendments to do that, which we'll be discussing with the commission at a later date, but this amendment, that was not the intent of this amendment. We received very few comments on the other portions of the amendments, which, just as a reminder, some of those relate to changes in our application fee structure. For the first time, we will have increased fees for development applications that involve resolution of violations of our standards. We are increasing fees for certain types of letters of interpretation for the first time in decades. Specifically those relating to wetlands delineations, like what April was talking about earlier. If someone applies for a letter of interpretation to confirm wetlands lines or determine the wetlands buffer on a property, our current rules require the fee be submitted for only $250, regardless of how big the property is or how much work the staff does on that LOI. So we've changed that so that the fee would be applied on a per acre basis in recognition of the larger amount of time that's required for larger property. Also, for the first time, a separate fee, if someone is applying for a waiver of strict compliance, it's only $250, so I don't want anyone to get worried that we're, imposing large fees. These are, for the most part, people who are applying to build one home that doesn't meet the standards of the CMP. We received some comments in support of all those changes. A big piece of the amendments deals with assigning expiration dates to certain documents that the commission issues. Very, very old waivers of strict compliance. These are those that were issued between 1985 and 1992 or thereabout. So they're very old. There are some still out there that reappear every once in a while. They were obviously based on old standards that are in the CMP. They're the one category of waivers that have not already expired and don't already have expiration dates. So after 30 plus years, we decided it was time to assign an expiration date to those waivers. Anyone who has one of those old documents will still have, even after the amendments are adopted and in effect, they'll have another full year to use that waiver. So they'll be notified of the steps, of the new expiration period and what they need to do. We'll be doing that later this year. And then primarily what this rule would do is assign expiration dates to certificates of filing, which you hear us talk about all the time, or CFs, we like to call them that too. They're completeness documents, they're not approvals, they're what the staff issues after an application for private development is completed here with the commission. We've never had an expiration date for those documents before in all of these years, and just like with those old waivers, they come back and somebody says, I have one of these documents, the CF from 1983. Can I proceed with my development? Well, it causes lots of chaos. And because of course that application was submitted under rules that have been not in effect for 30 years, municipal zoning has changed, all those things. So, henceforth, CFs are gonna have a 5-year lifespan. They need to be used within that 5-year period of time, and by that I mean go get a municipal permit of some kind or a county approval that's consistent with the CMP. And the rule would then also say if you have one of these documents that's older than, was issued before 2004, it will expire upon the effective date of these rules. We received a couple comments, not many, requesting longer grace periods, more time for people to use the CFs. Just of note here is we did do a very large notification effort for applicants and property owners to receive certificates of filing in the past, going all the way back to January of 2004. As you might imagine, that was tricky because people didn't use email back then. And so we had a lot of mailing address, we had to do a lot of hard copy mailing, which stuff into envelopes, which is not what we're used to. But we did notify about 1,600 applicants and property owners that our system tells us received certificates of filing but never used them, if you will, or didn't receive approvals for their projects. So they were notified. We point that out in the adoption notice, as well as this little phrase here that says, the rules provide the staff, me specifically, with the authority to determine that a municipal permit or approval, like a building permit or a planning board, like a subdivision approval, we can review that and determine that it doesn't raise any substantial issues with respect to the CMP. That's the magic phrase, no substantial issues. So it may not be 100% fully in line with the rule or with the municipal ordinance, but if there are minor differences and we don't believe that they raise any substantial issues, we have the ability to send a letter to that effect and allow the permit or approval to take effect. And that will be true for people with these certificates of filing that are set to expire. Good example, somebody gets municipal approval a week before the certificate of filing expires and sends it to us. We receive it. We haven't had a chance to review and sign off on it until after the expiration date of the certificate of filing. There's some leeway there. We have the ability to deal with that both now when the rule takes effect and going forward after the 5-year expiration period is assigned. So there is some flexibility in terms of recognizing these special circumstances, and that will continue in this situation as well. We also had someone, an attorney I believe, suggest that assigning an expiration date to certificates of filing constitutes a taking, an unlawful taking of property that the commission would not be permitted to do. And you'll see in our response where we just kind of simply said, certificates of filing are not approvals. They're not development approvals. They do not confer property rights or development rights. Applicants can't do anything when they get a certificate of filing other than go to the town and seek approval. So they are simply a document indicating completion of an application, no taking of property involved. This is just a little bit more of the couple of public comments we received about certificates of filing and expirations. We had a couple, one person suggest that the certificate of filing should remain in effect while an applicant seeks permits and approvals and assembles land for their project. So sort of indefinitely, it should remain in effect during that time period. And I think in our response, we said, basically, I'll paraphrase, that's the case now, and that's what's causing problems, is that somebody could say, well, it's taken me 12 years to assemble my project and get a permit. And then they come back and the rules have all changed, and that's exactly the situation we're trying to sort of rein in, so that people will know they have a 5-year time frame to obtain even just one permit or approval. It doesn't have to be everything. It can be a zoning permit, it can be, subdivision, a site plan approval, a septic, just one septic permit, one building permit, and that would be considered use of the certificate of filing, and then it would not expire. So we tried to explain a lot of that in the rule, in the adoption notice. Again, we really did not receive many comments on any other aspects where we were just clarifying, codifying some of the ways in which municipalities can zone for regional growth area development and the use of Pinelands development credits. We did have a couple interesting comments related to affordable housing. The rule, as proposed, kind of formally, for the first time, acknowledges that municipalities do have the ability to design their zoning plans to encourage or accommodate affordable housing by exempting affordable housing units from requirements to purchase Pinelands development credits. The rule mentions the standards that have to be met in order to be able to do that, which essentially, they're still required to accommodate the use of Pinelands development credits. They just have to ship them, essentially, to market rate units, to non-residential development. They have flexibility in terms of how to design zoning plans to meet their ever-growing affordable housing obligations. Some of our towns have very large obligations. This flexibility has been provided to the towns for many, many years, just never reflected specifically in the rules. So the rules will now say this and will provide clear direction on how towns can go about doing this. The comments we received were sort of suggesting that that doesn't go far enough, that if a development project contains any affordable housing units, the whole project should be exempted from the requirement to use PVCs. Also, this is one I really didn't expect, but that the commission should require municipalities to exempt all projects that contain affordable units from PVC requirements, rather than provide towns with the ability to do it if they choose. And in response to that, we basically said, well, just a reminder for everybody, the Pinelands Protection Act explicitly precludes the commission from doing that. We are not permitted to use affordable housing as a reason for approving a specific zoning ordinance or master plan, or reviewing and approving a specific development application. So while we can provide towns with flexibility to do these sorts of things, the commission cannot adopt requirements that affordable housing must be provided in certain ways. So it's an opportunity to remind ourselves of that provision in the act. Other just general comments. So here we are at the end of our process, sort of. We had our comment period, we had a hearing, we had lots of public comments. This is our schedule. We are not recommending any changes to the rule proposal as it was published in June. We submitted the proposal and the request for adoption of the rules and all the documents to the governor's office, to the proposed rules office, and in my experience, that process normally, we need to wait before, we need to wait to receive approval from the governor's office to proceed before this commission can act and adopt a rule. Normally that takes a month or two, thanks to Mike, who's up there on the screen somewhere. It took like 2 days, and I think I sent it up there on Wednesday or Thursday, and by Friday or Monday morning, good to go. I think that's in large part due to the widespread support for the rule, which the governor's office is aware of, the lack of a lot of comments and concerns about the rule, and all of the work that the staff in this commission have been doing on this project and these rules for such a long time. So that was a wonderful surprise. P&I discussion and recommendation, we're here today, hoping you all will proceed with adoption, and if that occurs, then we have the next 3 steps here. Anytime the amendments to the CMP are adopted, the minutes of that action have a 30 working day review period for the governor rather than 10 working days. So that's, when you add in holidays and weekends, it really extends out. But we'll be submitting the minutes of this meeting to the governor's office within a week or so. 30 working days will take us to sometime in December, at which point we would submit the rule and adoption notice to Office of Administrative Law for publication, and that publication would occur, I think it's January 5th, 2026, and that would then be the effective date of the amendments, and the end of the rulemaking process and the beginning of the implementation process for the staff. So anyway, very good news, obviously a long process, but we're happy to be here today recommending an adoption.
All right, well, thank you, Susan, for that overview. Thank you also to the staff for the insane amount of hours, time, effort put into getting us to this point. Thank you, Mike, and the governor's office for your help. And thank you to the advocates and the members of the public who have worked so hard and been just respectful, persistent, but respectful, and engaged. And we're just really happy to be here. And thank you. With that, any other commissioners have any comments, questions, concerns on any of this? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, thank you. Balloon drop, but something. All right. Okay, next up is public comment period. We only have one application for public comment, As a reminder, this public comment period is just on this application. There is a general public comment period that comes at the end of the meeting. This application is in Monroe Township, demolition of a building 50 years old or older, and construction of a playground and 2 basketball courts. Very good. Chuck, I don't know if my overview suffices or if we're good. All right. So the numbers on the screen for folks at home, is there anyone in the room who wanted to speak on this application? All right, we'll just give another minute. For folks at home, because I know there's a delay of my melodic voice. All right, anyone on the phone call?
No callers.
All right, so I'm gonna shut down this public comment period. If there was someone calling in, just please stay on the line and, you can speak, at the public comment period or maybe call back, it's gonna be a minute. Next up, Brad, with, overviewing some master plans and municipal ordinances that do not require any action on our part.
Sorry. Good morning, Commissioner. Commissioners, you all should have received a memo in the packet for this meeting. There were 5 ordinances that the Land Use Programs Office found to raise substantial issues, and an additional affordable housing plan, fairly minor ordinances. We continue to see towns sort of tweak their various cannabis ordinances, and additionally we had an ordinance amending the redevelopment plan in Manchester to permit a data center. This is one of the redevelopment plans that has a PDC requirement for non-residential uses. So we're interested to see what comes in terms of that.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Brad? Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you. How many, offhand, how many municipalities have begun to include data centers in their redevelopment?
So I believe this is the second ordinance that we've seen where data centers were permitted as a use. Both of them were tied to a redevelopment plan. So to my knowledge, there's no other sort of zones, like a zone-wide permitted use for data centers. It's just in those 2 locations.
Do we, when we're looking over this, do you look at the potential for water use requirements for that center, for a data center, and look also at either the KC rules or the state water supply plan, and whether the watershed's in deficit and that sort of thing, or how much is available? Do we have, and to let them know how feasible that would be?
Understood. So as of right now, we were really specifically looking at it from a permitted use issue, and in terms of what our rules currently contain, the use is permitted. Both were in regional growth areas. I think where we would be assessing that sort of impact would be during the actual application process, when the applicant comes in with their, full application in terms of, where they would be saying what their water usage sources would be coming from. I think that's when we would be assessing sort of our water needs.
Okay, so not when it's on a wish list, for example, but when it's actually a project that's being proposed.
But I think you reminded me, and Brad did too, when you brought up this ordinances, we are aware that this is a growing interest, I guess, although 2 redevelopment plans isn't.
Well, not yet,
But concerns and interest, and it is something we have on our radar screen to be taking a look at in terms of our standards and what concerns we might have here. Not so much related to a specific site or redevelopment plan or application, but just generally, are there standards that we need to come up with? So we have that on our list of things to do this year. Take a look at that. And water certainly one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
So the city of Lyman has already built an AI center.
Okay.
It's monstrosity. So you're not gonna render an opinion on the water usage until after it's already finished, it's built. So what happens if we render an opinion that the aquifer can handle that many gallons to keep this thing cool. Besides the fact they have to create 300 megawatts of electricity on that site, which means there's gonna be 6 new gas turbines, so what I don't understand is that, how can you build this thing without those approvals? Without knowing and invest all those resources, in this case, the city of Island has,
Yeah.
it's built.
Right, so you know that's not in the Pinelands area.
Right.
Yeah, but it's still gonna be pulling on the aquifer and.
Right,
under
but,
the area.
but I guess, yes, so I guess I just wanna make
Yeah.
clear that
Yes.
there's a tiny portion of Island in the Pinelands area.
Yes.
This is not there, so the commission doesn't really have the ability, right, I totally get your concerns, and I'd be curious to take a look at this one, just to see what it looks like. We don't have the ability, we don't have any opportunity to weigh in on that in terms of impacts on the aquifer, really. I guess unless DEP or somebody brings it to our attention, we really have to stay within our boundary. But I think what I'm describing is, and what Brad's trying to say too, is we aren't seeing a lot of demand or interest in these so far, which is good. We would not be looking at these things like water supply, wells, impact on the aquifer after construction. We'd be looking at it at the time an application is submitted here, at the beginning of the process, to make sure if they're proposing new wells in the Kirkwood-Cohansey, that's gonna likely bring in the commission's Kirkwood-Cohansey water management rules, and we would require an analysis at that point, before construction. Wetlands, obviously, stormwater management, all of that would be done here prior to any approval by the municipality and certainly prior to any construction. What I'm also saying is we're gonna be taking a look at, just generally the issue and, the problems that might be associated with the development of these things, where they're gonna be, where do our rules currently permit them, is that good or bad, do we need to adopt additional standards? So we're gonna be looking at that, but in the meantime, all of that analysis that you're describing that maybe didn't happen in the Violent case, would happen here before anything was, application could be completed, so there's that at least.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thanks everybody, thanks Brad. Moving on, we have 2 presentations, the first of which is our annual update on permanent land protection. For that, I'll turn it over to you, Sue.
Thank you.
Is that the one we were supposed to do first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Paul will get that up there. This is sort of the good news part of the meeting, or the updates we like to provide annually, so, Amber's going to talk about, permanent land protection in the Pinelands area for the past fiscal year. Good. Good? No, Christina. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you had it in your hand.
No.
Any presentation?
Lots of comments.
Yeah.
That is Wells Mills County Park.
Could you? I've been there.
Hi everyone, my name is Amber Mount, and I'm the plan specialist in the Land Programs Office, and today I'll present the current land protection fiscal year 2025 annual update. To start us off with some highlights for the year, more land was protected this year, and more land was actually protected this year than last year. Partly due to one of our big highlights of the year, a substantial PDC severance. Over 3,900 acres were preserved through PDC severance in the Special Agricultural Production Area from Pine Island Livery Company. You can see that in the photo to the right. Very ominous.
I love that sky.
State acquisitions were also higher this year when compared to last year. This includes a 260-acre piece added to the Pomona Woods Preserve in Hamilton. The original piece there preserved in the 90s. And after about a few years, without many non-government organization acquisitions, New Jersey Conservation Foundation preserved sites in Pineland and Tabernacle. These projects were completed without Pinelands conservation funds
one of the sites that New Jersey Conservation Foundation preserved was about 160 acres in Tabernacle. The site was previously owned by the Boy Scouts of Burlington County, and about 19 acres there were already PDC restricted, so it's just added it in. There are also a number of county acquisitions. We'll get into that. Next. In Burlington County, about 153 acres were preserved through the Farmland Preservation Program, and then another roughly 6 acres were preserved in Ocean County and Olmsted, and a total of 126 acres were preserved through open space in Ocean County. That includes a small piece in Stafford, 15 acres in Plumstead, 20 acres in Ocean Township, and another 80 acres in Manchester, and that's what you can see here on the map. This is notable because it is in the regional growth area where land tends to have a higher value. So here's an overview of all the preservation that occurred this year. Pinelands programs, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. That was a little lower this year than last year. PDC severance, quite high. State acquisitions, a little higher. County open space and farmland preservation, that was about the same amount of acreage that was preserved last year. And non-governmental organization acquisitions were higher. For a total of 5,367 acres preserved in fiscal year 2025. First, some more information on our Pinelands programs. The categories you see listed here, this all occurred in a case where an applicant is pursuing a development application for maybe a residential or commercial project, and based on the conditions on their property, they may be required by the commission through our CNP standards to deed restrict a portion of their property. That may be because there's a land use regulation on their property or environmental resources on the land, like teeny could have. Taking a look at these numbers here, density transfer is a little higher than it has been, but overall, the 147 acres that was preserved this year is a little lower than last year. So last year, 324 acres were preserved. In all, there's been about 30,000 acres preserved through Pinelands programs, but keep in mind that doesn't just include these application conditions that I've been mentioning. That also includes other things like memorandum of agreements, limited practical use program, other agreements and settlements. The commission has identified acquisition target areas. These are areas where the commission encourages preservation. One being the section 502 areas. That's what you can see in the gold. And it was section 502 of the National Parks and Recreation Act of 1978, which is the original legislation that created the Pinelands National Reserve, and that states the goal to protect, preserve, and enhance the significant values of the land and water resources in the Pinelands area. So 66% of those areas have been preserved. The other areas we have, which you can see in blue, are the 21 planning areas, and these were originally 20 of them, but in fiscal year 2024, the commission established a new area in Pemberton, and the commission also expanded the PZ Belton area. These additions were a result from the commission's management area boundary analysis and vulnerability assessment for climate change impacts. Just be aware, if you look, some of these areas kind of overlap, so there could be preserved land, technically both. And the commission encourages preservation in these areas through the Pinelands Conservation Fund. It is a requirement for applicants that apply to our land preservation grant. It's a requirement that the land be located in one of these target areas. That doesn't mean that that's the only reason why land preservation would occur here. Through all the other preservation programs, preservation could occur here, and we keep track of it. And so, for example, last year we did not award a PCF grant. So all the acquisition that occurred here is just for the program. Here's some more information on the state acquisitions from Green Acres
for New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, which is the municipalities on the left. What you can see in Buena Vista Township in the forest area, about 40 acres expanded the Peasley Wildlife Management Area. The activity in Hamilton includes some small pieces, but it also includes the roughly 260 acres added to Pomona Woods Preserve, and in Woodland District, 21 acres were added to the Sudi Place Preserve. And the PDC program, one of our favorite land preservation programs here, since the inception of the program, there's been over 62,000 acres of land preserved, mainly in the preservation area district, special agricultural production area, and agricultural production area. You can learn more about the PDC program in our next presentation. This year, 39 acres were deed restricted in the preservation area district, and again, our big story of the year, 3,980 acres were deed restricted in the special agricultural production area, all due to Pinelands Commissioners Company. So earlier this week, Paul got to go out to watch the cranberry harvest. You could see the big Dr. Seuss operation. And Paul took these pictures in the horizontal rain program.
Yes.
It was and 282 acres were also deed restricted in the agricultural production area. So overall, the management areas throughout all the preservation programs, the management areas with the highest percentage of preserved land are the preservation area district, special agricultural production area, and the forest area. And this is expected and what we want to see because these are the lands with the most ecologically sensitive areas in the Pinelands area. Next up is the agricultural production area. This is mostly farmland, and the preservation that we see here is moving through farmland preservation programs or PDC severance, typically not open space. And overall, what we see is that these numbers continue to increase, and while these totals here incorporate the new preserved lands that we've been discussing, it also reflects the work by the commission staff to update the data based on older deeds that are brought to our attention and further refinements to our GIS data to reflect historical deeds. So as you can see, preservation generally increases, and something to note when you look at this graph, the y-axis at the bottom there, it starts at 420,000 acres preserved, doesn't start at 0. Although like that little tiny bar, that's not 0. That's over 420,000 acres preserved, and this is also starting in 2011. So this graph is just blown up so you could see the changes that are happening there. And what you can see is that over the past 5 years, there's been a small, slow growth, but you can really see in 2025 a big boost. And we've discussed all of the land preservation programs that occur in the Pinelands area, including acquisitions by counties, the state, non-governmental organizations, or land preserved through our Pinelands programs. And they all add incrementally to the increased land preserved, but what really happened this year is that one significant PDC severance that boosted the total of land protected in the Pinelands area. So now we're at around 488,000 acres, or roughly 52% of the Pinelands area permanently protected.
Thank you, Amber, and I apologize, I read my notes wrong, so I should have introduced you when I introduced you, so I just wanted to apologize. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Amber?
Madam Chair, if I could?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Amber, that's a terrific presentation. It's very encouraging to see how the acreage is growing, particularly through the application of the PDC program. So that's really great to see. Now we're over 50% of the total Pinelands. Wonderful. I do have a question. On one of your slides, you talked about different categories and how much each of those categories were contributing to the total. And on that slide, you had residential density as a category, but you also had clustering. And I'm not sure what the distinction is between clustering and residential density. I thought they were maybe the same thing, but I must be wrong.
So clustering is our specific requirement for cluster development in the forest and rural development areas only. So the numbers you see there are only the lands preserved in those two management areas as a result of cluster development applications. Residential density could be in the regional growth area, for example. Sometimes somebody's building a house on a lot that isn't quite big enough and they deed restrict an acre next door on an adjacent property for density purposes, and so you see that here. It's this year a pretty small number. It's not all that common, but it's not clustering. It's sort of, if somebody needs some extra land, they deed restrict that adjacent, so it's not a non-contiguous density transfer program either. That's something different. So we try to break out all these different categories, but that's really what
Okay.
it's all about.
All right, thanks, Susan.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one
Yeah,
more. Amber, do you know, is DEP, actively using the limited practical use program?
A little quiet.
How
Yeah.
quiet is quiet?
Oh, I don't think we've seen one in quite a long time. It's an old, for those of you who are newer, it's an old land acquisition program that was federally funded and state funded many years ago, primarily targeted to acquisition of very small properties that really can't be developed and are deemed to have limited practical use, LPU we call it. And there was a big slug of them back in, I don't know, the late 90s, I guess, 90s or so, 80s, 90s, early 90s, of these little tiny properties, most of them were like 0.2 acres, 0.3 acres, and DEP, the commission identified the properties, DEP purchased them using a combination of state and federal funding. But we hardly see any anymore. It's every once in a while, someone will express an interest in acquisition of their property. Typically we send them, because the commission doesn't buy any properties, typically we'll just forward that or tell them to contact DEP directly. Usually that results in the Green Acres acquisitions that Amber talked about, not using the limited practical use program or funding. I can't honestly even think of the last time we saw an LPU acquisition.
So is there any way to find out if the federal and state money that was appropriated for this purpose is still existing somewhere in some account that might be tapped for other
Yes.
more pertinent
I believe it's either, I can't recall because it's so long ago, but it's either the federal money or the state money that was completely exhausted many moons ago. So there's still some funding remaining in one of those pots.
in the federal pot?
I don't recall. I think it's the state.
I'll be down, federal.
I think all the federal money was spent a long time ago, and there may still be some state funding remaining, but we can try and find out what the balance is.
And whether it's changed over time, or if it's a static appropriation, or
It was
whether.
a one-time appropriation. And it was a very specific appropriation for properties of limited practical use, which the commission had to then do rules to define and implement, so. But we can try to find out, from our friends at DEP, how much of that money remains. It's not much.
I would be curious to know what might be left,
Okay.
where the license plate money goes.
Not to us. So we should not whisper about that. I should mention, I think it's important because this is one of those sort of myths or misunderstandings that people generally have. The limited practical use money, so there was an appropriation made, there was the federal money, there was the state money, and there's also a provision where when people buy Pinelands license plates in the state of New Jersey, the revenue, the funding from that is supposed to go to the limited practical use program for DEP to use for acquisition in the Pinelands area. None of the license plate money comes or has ever come to the commission. We receive no benefit from that. DEP receives that money, and again, we can ask about how much money they receive from that. It's not a lot, because they're only receiving like the profit, not.
Right, it's not
Not
the
the
whole
yeah.
month.
But we'll find out.
if the limited practical use program has run its course, that money should go to someplace where land acquisition would benefit, whatever that would be. That was my thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. Transfer it to a different.
Correct.
Or to the Pinelands Conservation Fund.
Or
For
not-
example,
Exactly,
yes.
yes, exactly.
But not swept back into the general revenues, this
No,
budget
no, no,
not.
Right.
No, no.
Any other questions or comments? Right, thank you, Amber. All right, next up is a presentation on the PDC program, and that one is.
Yes, it is. Okay, I don't think this will take too much longer. Amber already gave you big, great news. But it was a very busy and successful year for the PDC Bank, which, for those of you who are not aware, is not the same thing as the commission. Even though the commission staff administers the PDC Bank and performs all the functions of the PDC Bank, the bank itself is still a separate entity, technically part of Division of Banking and Insurance. We're gonna be looking to try and change that now that it's been about 14 years since the commission really took over administration of the bank. We need some legislative changes to make that happen, but in any case, the bank itself is a separate entity right now, it's just housed and administered here. The bank is required to issue an annual report by the end of August of every year. So that was done this year and distributed to all of you, posted on our website. This photo looks familiar, pretty much the same. This was our cover photo this year. This is Pine Island, which is really heavily featured in the report. I'm gonna walk through sort of the highlights of all these different areas of the program, so I won't repeat them all right now. Oh, and I should say thank you to Brad and Amber, because I could never have made this presentation look as nice as it does. Or the report, which if you looked at this year, is significantly enhanced and looks modern and much different than in prior years, thanks to largely to Amber. So, first step in the PDC process is an applicant or a property owner applies here to the commission to get a letter of interpretation to tell them how many Pinelands development credits their property is entitled to. You can see that we received fewer applications for letters of interpretation this past fiscal year than the prior year. So, however, although the number of those documents was smaller, the number of PDCs allocated in those letters of interpretation was hugely increased, almost 400% increase from the prior year, which is crazy. And the total number of rights allocated in the letters of interpretation in fiscal year 25 was 570, which is just, that's an indication that the properties that came in for allocations were very large. You can see here our interesting graph on the number of PDCs allocated by fiscal year. You look all the way on the right to see 2025, you can see it was a significant increase. The highest total we've seen since 2007, so it really was quite a big year. And then, even better than the letters of interpretation activity is what they led to, which is the severance of the credits that have been allocated, because the severance process requires that a permanent deed restriction be placed on the properties before the property owner actually gets the pieces of paper, the PDC certificates that they can then sell. So the deed restriction is the key part of the severance process, and in fiscal year 2025, as Amber mentioned, over 4,000 acres were preserved, most of which was in Washington Township, part of the large Pine Island Cranberry Company property, and just about 4,000 acres in the special agricultural production area were preserved the past fiscal year. A big increase, which I think this will show you. Over time, you can see it's been many years since we had numbers approaching the 4,000 acre mark. back in 2006. And really the spikes that you see here in the 2000 to 2005, 2006 range were really not related to the market for PDCs or property owners deciding to sever and sell their credits to developers. This was largely the time when the state PDC purchase program and the special Pinelands farmland preservation rounds were very, very active, and people were looking to sell their credits to the state and preserve their land, or participate in the state farmland preservation program, and the value of their property at that, through that farmland preservation program was largely determined by the value of the credits. And so there was a lot of money involved, and there was a lot of money available from the state for these programs, and the commission saw a big increase in people seeking letters of interpretation and wanting to preserve their land through the PDC program as a result. But that hasn't, the state's purchase of credits and the farmland preservation programs and the Pinelands and the special money that was available for that, that really that ended pretty much 2005, 2006. So everything we've seen since then are the more traditional severance activities, people severing their credits so that they can either be used for specific projects right away or sold to private developers. Just a little pie chart to show you more graphically. These are the management areas on the land capability map that are the designated sending areas. This is where PDCs are allocated by the commission. Pretty close to the same now. Preservation Area District and the Special Agricultural Production Area make up almost equal parts of the land that's been preserved. There remains quite a good amount of land in the agricultural production area in particular that has not yet been preserved through the use of PDCs or other means. But that is also a steadily growing number. So we're up over 62,000 acres now. Then after severance of the PDCs, JAS over there issues PDC certificates to the owner, which they can then decide for themselves what they want to do with them, sell them, keep them in the bank, give them to their family members. All kinds of different things can happen. Lots of sales in 2025. Significant increase in the number of credits sold. Significant increase in sales prices of PDCs. The average price in 2024 was just under $19,000 per development rate. And in 2025, which edging close to 23,000, and we are continuing to see in this beginning part of 2026, I think all sales prices have been over 23.5, if I'm right about that, Jess, right? So we've seen a handful of sales, not a handful, a significant number of sales since July, for 23,500 up to 25,000. So the price seems to be holding pretty steady, which is good news for farmers and other people who own PDCs or land to which credits are allocated.
Yeah.
So you can see the change in the sale prices, average sales, and inflation adjusted dollars over time. Again, the spikes in that same time period that I was talking about, where there's a lot of activity going on in terms of state purchase of credits, and then that really drove any private purchases that were happening. That was the only time period where we saw credit selling for between $30,000 and even $40,000 per rate. We have not approached that ever in the intervening years. After sale, the owner of the credits can decide what to do again. They can hold on to them, they can resell them, or they can choose to use them for a specific development project. We call that the redemption process. So they can send in their certificates after they filled them out, the town signed them, and assign them to a specific project or application they have here with the commission. And the bank processes them, notifies the commission, and once the commission signs off on a municipal or county approval for that project, the credits are considered to be redeemed or used. And just as the numbers we showed you for all the other parts of the steps of the process were significantly increased in 2025, likewise the redemption process, there were a lot of credits redeemed. 151 development rights, which is a pretty high number in any given year. You can see here on the map in the little red dots, hopefully, where the projects are located, where credits were redeemed. Not surprisingly, they are in Egg Harbor Township, Monroe Township, Winslow Township. These are the regional growth areas where we've been seeing a lot of development activity and use of credits.
What's the one that's beyond the regional growth?
That is a solar project in Tabernacle Township, which I'll talk about next.
I've seen that.
That was a good segue.
I was just saying segue.
Very good. So, the projects where PDCs were redeemed last fiscal year, there were, 15 projects, I think? I can't remember the number, but, these are the reasons why PDCs were required. So you can see the solar project at the bottom there. That's the first one we have where, our rules require use of credits if a solar project is being built, for example, in the preservation area district, and it's not on a closed landfill, or it's not involved in a site remediation project. So here it was on, an old resource extraction site, so the credit obligation kicks in. Just above that this is really the first instance we've had where credits were redeemed, for a large warehouse project. This is in Waterford Township. This commission has approved a number of redevelopment plans that allow the municipalities to shift PDC obligations in their regional growth areas from traditional residential development to non-residential development that they were seeking to accommodate at specific sites in redevelopment plans. That was done in Manchester Township, Monroe Township, and Waterford Township. This project redeems credits, not all of those 14.25, that's the overall project number. They redeemed, I think, 4 or 16 development rights. So the second phase for the other larger warehouse project on that site will be required to redeem the remainder. And then the other 3 reasons that you see at the top there, those were residential projects, the more typical use of credits that we see, developers seeking a density bonus, the lots are undersized, they don't meet zoning, or there's a mandatory obligation built into the zone or the redevelopment plan that a certain percentage of the units use PDCs. And you can see here, this the photo there is of a very large project in Egg Harbor Township's regional growth area, 657 total units by the time the project is finished. Some are single-family homes, some like this are townhouses, a combination. They have a large PDC obligation. They have purchased and redeemed all of the required PDCs and are redeeming them and using them over time.
Susan, I have a question. What is the circumstance under which a party would purchase a certificate and then not redeem them? Would that be a failed construction project, didn't go forward? Or?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a number of reasons. I think sometimes, most often what we see is purchase of credits for a specific project, all the way at the end of the process, and it has all their approvals, and is about ready to be built, then somebody will buy and redeem the credits. They wait till the very last minute, which is understandable. PDCs are not cheap, and so people are waiting to spend money until the end when they're sure that they're gonna move forward with their project. That's the most common. But there are times when we see people purchase the credit, sometimes they'll send them to the bank for redemption, and we'll say, okay, we'll notify the commission, make sure you get your approvals. We'll hold on to the credits, if you will, they're pending, and pending status. And then they don't seek approvals, or they get their approval, but there's another issue, stormwater management, or sewer's not available yet, and the project just sits, and the credits don't actually proceed all the way through to the redemption process. Once in a while, we'll see somebody purchase credits and hold on to them, and we don't really know what project they bought them for. We process the sale, we send them certificates, and they go away, we don't hear from them for years. So, it could be, I've always wondered whether people buy them for investment purposes and then try to resell them for more money. That doesn't seem common. It does happen, but it doesn't seem like a common reason for the purchase. So it's all different, or they buy buy them and hold on to them, you know, because they're not quite sure where they wanna build, or it's a company that buys them and they have multiple projects and, you know, they're trying to figure out which ones to use for different projects. So it's a fascinating,
Yeah.
puzzle. We don't always know exactly what's going on, or
Well,
what.
I wonder, some companies buy them at a time when they think that, oh, PDCs are at a good price right now. And I know that,
Yeah.
you know, 5 years from now, I'm gonna build a project, that probably costs more, let's buy them now.
Yeah, I've always thought that that would be happening more than it does. I've asked developers those questions over time, and usually the answer I get is, we don't have any extra money lying around to do that. So we wait till the end, when we're absolutely sure that the commission's gonna sign off on our approvals, and the town's approved it, and then we'll buy and use them, or, you know, so there doesn't seem to be a lot of, investment by town, you know, looking to do that. It's more private, a couple private parties, individuals have made some attempts at doing what you just described, but it's not the development companies.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's interesting. So you can see here, I always get confused by this graph, but,
The pictures didn't load.
right, yeah, the big blue box is showing you that most of the credits redeemed in 2025 were for projects, residential projects of 5 or more units. Most of them were for that large project in Harbor Township that I just described, and the other big one was was a Romanian project at Winslow Township's regional growth area. And you see the warehouse, 16 rights were redeemed, and the solar project, the bottom there, where they redeemed 5 rights. So, rights redeemed again, shown over time, up and down a lot. 2025 was a pretty good year, but we did have some good years in the early 2020s as well. Pretty much reflects the market of, you know, when people are ready to go with their projects. That's when we see the credits being redeemed. Overall, since 1982, redemption of credits. 4,620 rights have been redeemed. It's a pretty big number, although I'll show you in another couple slides what the overall number of potential redemptions will be at the end of the time, sort of. So, regional growth areas, obviously, that's where most of the use of credits occurs. That's by design, of CMP. We've tried to break down the reasons for that, reasons for redemption of credits over time, because we're trying to track, is that shifting? Where are credits being used, where are they not being used? About half of the credit redemption that has occurred is for the traditional residential projects in regional growth areas where a base density has been assigned that doesn't require the use of credits, and developers have the option of increasing that density through the use of credits, so that's the bonus density, it's an optional program. 21% of the credits redeemed to date have been due to zoning and redevelopment plans in place in the more recent years that require the use of credits, so that it's not an optional, it has to be a component of any project that's built. So that's an increasing number of credit redemption pretty much each year. And then there are other situations where credits are required, use variances, when somebody seeks to build a non-residential project in a residential zone, for example. And we see some for waivers of strict compliance. Somebody who applies for a waiver to build a home that doesn't meet our environmental standards. If the waiver is approved, it comes with an obligation to redeem one development right. So that'd be a broad range. The report this year, for the first time, includes some maps of, zoomed in maps of certain regional growth areas. This is the Egg Harbor Township, Galloway, Hamilton, Atlantic County regional growth area. So you can see all the dots represent projects where PDCs were redeemed. They're color coded based on decade, because we try to we're curious to see if anything, you can notice trends or any shifts over time. Generally, what this map shows me is that most use of credits in Atlantic County is occurring in Egg Harbor Township, which I already knew, but the map really hits that point home pretty strongly. There has not been a lot of use of credits in Galloway or Hamilton Township's regional growth areas. bit at the end here on PDC supply and demand, always an ongoing analysis and worry in the back of my mind of, you know, how the long-term health of the program is very important, obviously, to the success of the whole Pinelands plan. Sitting here today, we can tell you that our estimate of PDC supply is about just over 8,900 rights. That's based on this first category here of 1,573 rights, where those are PDCs that are currently posted on the seller's list on the PDC Bank's website, people who are actively seeking to sell their credits. There's 404 rights listed today. There are another 1,169 rights that people own and are holding on to for various reasons, and they didn't want their names to be listed on the seller's list, but they're out there. They can be sold at any time, and in fact, we did just process a sale from somebody whose name's not on the seller's list, but somebody knew about them anyway and was able to purchase credits. And we'll be redeeming them shortly, we believe. So those rights are immediately available right now, 1,573. There have been a number of letters of interpretation issued to allocate credits that have not progressed through this process that I described. They've not been severed. Well, the LOIs are valid, they haven't expired. That's under 502 rights. And then the larger pool, if you will, we estimate about 6,800 rights are still out there that could be allocated to lands in one of the sending areas. I suspect a large bulk of that is in the agricultural production area. So there's still a lot of land out there that has either not participated at all by getting a letter of interpretation, or they have an LOI that's expired and they need to come back and review that. So that's our supply estimate. And then on the demand side, we estimate, this is tricky, demand is the trickiest part of all this, frankly. So 2023, the estimate was 10,800 development rights. Could be needed as a result of municipal zoning and development in the regional growth areas largely. We've made some adjustments to that in the last 2 fiscal years so that obviously as credits get used and lands get preserved, the demand for credits is reduced. So we're down to, we think, about 9,650 rights. We try to take into account, so again, the 420 rights that are in approved projects but still need to be acquired and redeemed. We have a list of other active projects that maybe don't have their approvals yet, but they're recently active, their applications are complete here, they have certificates of filing. That's another 727. So those top 2 numbers, 420 and 727, that's the active immediate demand for credits. And if you remember, can I go backwards? Supply, that 1573, those are the credits that are available right now for purchase. So you can see that there are sufficient credits available for sale right now to satisfy the immediate active demand. And then the longer term number at the bottom there, 9,650. Mentioned that demand's tricky. There's a lot of factors that go into it. It's something that we're going to be focusing on more and trying to come up with standardized, easy ways to report on this. If I had my dream, I would hit a button every 6 months and it would magically update demand. We're not quite at that process yet, but we have to take into account all kinds of things. Municipal zoning, anytime zoning changes in a regional growth area, anytime a municipality adopts a redevelopment plan in a regional growth area, it can impact demand for PDCs by changing what's permitted on a particular property. If the commission reduces the size of the regional growth area through either an amendment to the land capability map or approving a municipal ordinance, that affects demand. Likewise, if the commission approves an ordinance to expand the regional growth area, as you did in Berlin Township fairly recently, and then Berlin Township zoned its increased regional growth area for, I think it was assisted living, continuing care communities, and that increases demand for credits. Then there's potential for more credits to be used. Also part of the demand estimate is sort of a moving target of which projects, are there new projects, do we have new applications, who's gotten an approval, are the these real projects, or are the approvals now so old that we shouldn't count them as active anymore? So that's sort of a moving target. We look at what vacant land is remaining in the regional growth area by zoning district, but that also is challenging because it doesn't take into account redevelopment that could happen in the future. You only looked at vacant land, you're probably undercounting because a property that has a house on it or a small commercial use could be redeveloped in the future for a much bigger project that requires credit. So it's tricky, but we are doing our best to keep track of all that and develop some system of regular reporting. And that's it. And this again is Pine Island from a very rainy field trip home this week. I think it's still a beautiful picture. So, yeah, that's it.
Very, very informative. Thank you so much, Susan. Anyone have any questions or comments for Stu on all this info?
I have one.
Yeah.
I suppose this would be far off in the future, Susan, but what would ever happen if the actual supply of credits were to be extinguished, and yet we'd still have demand for projects that meet them?
This is a very good question. So a couple things. That's why the supply and demand estimates are important, so we can figure out, are we approaching that point at some period of time in the future? But one of the things the commission has talked about, not recently, but years ago, was designation of additional PDC sending areas, the forest area, for example, other lands that the commission is interested in seeing preserved. Forest area is huge, so again, we would have to proceed cautiously in terms of identifying new areas to which credits could be allocated. You don't want to flood the market, so to speak, but it is a possibility that new sending areas could be designated so that more credits could be allocated and made available. Or the commission, I guess on the flip side, could decide the program was successful, it has protected all the land that we wanted to have protected. No one needs to use credits anymore in the regional growth area because we're done. That's far in the future, I think, but so there's a variety of ways that the commission could respond. It really depends on, what you're seeking to achieve and when that happens.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? All right, go ahead, Alan.
I just wanted to express my appreciation to Jess Noble, who makes all this work on today.
That's right, yes.
She's very quiet, but she does a great job.
Yes, thank you so much, Jess. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, public comment period. I'll put the phone number up and it's gonna get me the list. If you are viewing at home and would like to comment, please dial the number that is on the screen and wait, and we will get to you. And then sign-ups in the room, Dr. Amy Golden.
You're tired of hearing from me.
No.
But having been involved in the preservation efforts for Blackburn watershed for over a decade, I've witnessed firsthand the dedication and commitment of the Pinelands Commission. The proposed redesignation is a monumental step and a watershed moment towards ensuring preservation of vital habitats. I applaud the Commission's approval of the CMP and look forward to the positive impact this decision will have for generations to come. And I want to thank you personally for your patience through the years and addressing our concerns, and I feel like we're making progress. There's a lot more work to do, but thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Connie Wagner.
Again, I want to thank the commission. It's been educational. I've enjoyed my work with preservation of the Blackwater watershed. I've learned a great deal about the decision-making processes of the Pinelands Commission. Your thoroughness, your approach not to rush to judgment, your willingness to hear opinions and concerns from communities, whether they're in the watershed or not. And along the way, I've gotten benefits like a beautiful calendar that's pointed out. There have been interesting presentations that I've learned from, and also met a number of people who are stewards of Pinelands. I realize there are still hurdles in front of you, and I wish you success in the future decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, it looks like Marianne Rishi.
I was just signing in.
Oh, you are, okay. The floor is yours.
I will at least thank you, on behalf of the town of Hamilton. The Hamilton Lake Park, ADA accessibility and funding project has been a big job, that Ernie and I and Chuck have worked well with, making it success. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Jason, come on up.
Hi everyone, Jason Howell, Pinelands Conservation Alliance. Great job. The public really appreciates, I know, many thousands of people were really counting on this to happen, the Black Run headwaters protection. I did have one question, which is, I've heard countering opinions. I have my own opinion, but I think for clarifying purposes, on January 1st or 2nd, when these become official, what holds if an application comes through? Is it the forest area designation, or is it the current zoning at the township level before the township goes to, amend their zoning? So what holds to an application, the CMP or the township zoning on January 2nd?
I know January 10th.
Or 10th?
I think it's the fit.
Oh, okay.
It's within there.
Okay.
So I don't know that I can answer that specifically, Jason. This is always an issue whenever the CMP is amended, not just for a map change, but for when new standards are adopted. It really depends on what's the application for, when is it submitted, is it already in process, does it have an approval, is it in the approval process? There's a lot of factors,
So there isn't exactly a set answer
No,
to
I
that
mean,
question? Okay.
one of the answers I can give you is, when the CMP is amended, the Pinelands Protection Act and the rules provide towns with a year to respond, to amend their ordinances. And so we take that year into consideration sometimes, when we have to, if the rule changes are big, like stormwater, for example. We have tons of applications in process in various stages. We try to factor in that towns are changing their ordinances during this time period and have a year. That's a different situation than a map change per se, but technically speaking, Evesham has a year to amend its zoning. I don't think it's gonna take them that long, because they're working on it already. I also don't think we're gonna receive development applications that quickly. So I mean, again, we haven't really figured out exactly what would happen. We will take a look at what we have, if anything, that's currently pending. I don't know that we have any applications that are sort of pending for development, and try to figure all that out. Sort of keeping the township schedule in mind too.
Great, that's very helpful, thank you. One other question, there's many members of the public interested in the Kirkwood-Cohenzie case, the lawsuit against the commission. Can you let the public know also where to watch those proceedings or attend in person?
Sure. I don't know if there are any restrictions with regard to attending in person, because the courtroom's not exactly huge. But I will certainly talk to our DAG and get the information about the live stream.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thanks. Anybody else in the room? Do we have anybody on the phone?
There are no callers.
All right, shut it down. Thank you, everybody. Any final questions, comments before we move to adjourn?
Laura, I just have one comment, and it deals with the snakehead issue and the isolated stream. I would urge my colleagues not to get squeamish on this. If those critters get into a larger watershed, it's going to be a real problem. I've dealt with invasive species in other watersheds in other states, and once they're out of the bag, it's very difficult to maintain. These are nasty critters. We need to eliminate them now, as quickly as we can. And if there's collateral damage, so be it. Thank you. My opinion.
Thanks, Alan. Any other questions or comments? All right, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.